Yeah, okay. Thanks a lot, Mikko. And hi, everybody. Good morning. From Rovaniemi. My name is Francis Joy, and I'm originally from England, from the north of England, from Yorkshire. So I'm hoping that you can understand my Northern English accent. I work as a postdoctoral researcher at the Arcticum Keskus here in Rovaniemi, the Arctic Centre. And I'm going to present some research this morning about my work with the rock paintings in Finland. Before I start this morning, I'd just like to express my acknowledgements to Ismo Lukkanen, who's in the seminar with us this morning, for the cooperation with him since about 2013, and also the use of his photographic material. Ismo is a Finnish photographer who's photographed all the rock paintings in Finland, and we've been doing cooperation work for quite a few years now. So I'll put a link to his work, and many of the photographs that you'll see today are what Ismo has kindly allowed me to use. And also Imo Kayan, and I don't know whether Imo's here yet, but also field work and research with Imo before he retired on 2 different occasions. And also just to begin by expressing my gratitude to both of these colleagues for their work. So I'll start screen sharing now. Let's have a look. So Mikko, you would need to enable me to screen share so that I can show my PDF, the presentation. Mikko, are you still there?
Sorry, I muted my microphone. Yeah, now it should work. I put it.
Okay. All right, great. So let's see here, screen share. Okay, here we go. So,
yes.
Yeah, okay. So hopefully everybody can see that, I hope. So I'm going to speak this morning about in scholarly discourse into the study of rock art in Finland, Sweden and Norway. Much of the emphasis has been placed on shamanism and shamanic landscapes, as well as animal ceremonialism, which are themes that are abundant. These landscapes have brought into question discussions on origins, history and ethnicity of the populations of these areas. Despite some excellent scholarship, virtually nothing has been studied with regard to other layers of the art, such as cosmology, which is concerned with an understanding of the universe, as well as astronomy. Religious cosmology is a way of explaining the dynamic structure and order of the cosmos or universe as a process from a religious perspective. This may include beliefs on origins in the form of a creation myth. What was found when I began to investigate the art on the Sami drums and rock paintings and carvings in Finland, Sweden and Norway is that there's a whole area of scholarship concerning representation and the depths of Sami history in relation to such a topic and its potential benefits to academic study, which is missing. Instead, the problems of ethnicity, especially in archaeology, not race, has taken up a central position. In latter, posits a biologically distinctive classification in the human family, while the former emphasizes peoplehood based on culture, history and collective life. It must be said that this complex and indeed controversial subject matter has been used as a way to subordinate the Sami and their cultural history and spiritual traditions. One of the ways this has been done in academic research is to refer to the rock paintings of Finnish, Swedish and Norwegian, which places them in a new order with no cross-cultural management. which in Finland benefits the Finns and their cultural history when viewed from both inside and outside of the culture. According to the archaeological record, the Sami do not have a prehistory inside or outside of their current homelands or in the southern and central areas of Finland, despite there being scores or many Sami place names. It is considered that Sami ethnicity and culture was formed around the 8th century. Therefore, a central focal point in my research has been attempting to demonstrate the role, function, benefits and value art can play in discussions about cultural heritage, ethnicity, race and a possible cultural origin. Art is typically not considered as a contributor or determinant in securing joint recognition concerning management of rock art and the cultural history because it is viewed as a passive component in Western archaeological discourses, which is often concerned with statistics and economic data. Through research, I've attempted to bring into focus the relationship between rock art and Sami cosmology and shamanism as a method applied in indigenous research practice that is used to empower the Sami people in terms of self-esteem and personal development and development of traditions. So some of the main research questions, just to give you an insight into these. The first one is, what significance do the figures in rock paintings in Finland and the symbolism and figures on the sacred Nodi drums from 17th, 18th century Sapmi have in terms of understanding links with Sami cultural history in Sweden in relation to cosmology and cultural heritage? The second question is, can the content of prehistoric rock paintings be a contributing factor for using art history as a valuable method for helping to elaborate on discussions concerning cultural heritage and any possible signs of ethnicity? And the third question is, what does damage and vandalism at prehistoric rock painting sites help bring into focus in terms of a lack of adequate protection and effective policies? Management of rock art sites is undertaken by Museo Verasto, and paintings are automatically protected by the Antiquities Act from 1963. But because of how some paintings are located now close to what have developed as urban areas, and also ones in remote areas, these have become subject to vandalism and also as tourist attractions. So the main aims of the presentation, this is really important to understand because it's the motivation behind my research. And I want to say that I'm not saying that the Finns can't claim any involvement in rock paintings. That's not what I'm saying. But if you bear with me, I'm going to read the reasons why this research is really necessary. So in the study of prehistoric rock art throughout the Nordic countries, much emphasis has been placed on the art as being an expression of North Eurasian hunting cultures, where shamanism and animal ceremonialism, for example, within earlier research by eminent Finnish scholars Anna-Leena Sikala, Antti Lahelma, Milton Nunes, and Eero Autio, just as examples, takes up a central position. Therefore, and in terms of the development of Sami pre-Christian religion and worldview, and according to Sami archaeologist Inga Maria Mulk and Tim Bayliss-Smith, the Sami religion is classified as a North Eurasian hunting religion, but it developed its own form during the post-glacial period when the Sami people lived as hunters and gatherers and fishers in relative isolation from other Finno-Ugric groups. It was animistic religion, the natural world and all things within it, including people, animal, plants, and even stones, were considered to be animated. The worldview was communicated through myths, stories, songs, dances, images, and rituals. And a distinctive feature of all North European religions was the importance of rituals connected to hunting and fishing, ceremonies involving animals that were hunted, and shamanism. And so what the main point about this is that, when the rock paintings have been analysed and assessed in Finland, they've been categorised as being Finnish because of this link with the language to the Finno-Ugric language stratum, and also these very early North Eurasian hunting cultures. But what's really not being emphasized enough is this split, this separation between the North Eurasian hunting culture and the development of the Sami culture, maybe 7,000 years ago. And then also we see that according to Sami scholar Veli-Pekka Lehtela, who's a Sami historian working at the University of Oulu, he says that Sami heritage of pictorial art reaches back to the rock drawings of thousands of years ago, so suggesting an origin. Comparative analysis of symbolism and figures from the Sami Noide shaman drums from the 17th and 18th century from Swedish and Finnish Sápmi shows different types of parallels with rock paintings in Finland. Therefore, and in a broader context, rock carvings from Alta Norway, where the Sami people still have settlement, likewise help demonstrate that the Sami and their ancestors have associations with rock art there, as well as example at the Bajenelanda, Laponia in Sweden. So we do know that the Sami people have actually made rock paintings and rock carvings. And then just to continue a little bit more to explain this introduction, within these discourses, different questions have been asked about what have been considered human figures wearing horns, and some who have triangular shaped heads at 17 rock art sites in Finland. In turn, these discussions have also been influenced by Siberian shamanism, because shamanisms there wear horns as part of the traditional costume, which would make that association with the Finno-Ugric language stratum and also the North Eurasian hunting cultures. The analysis into these figures and their attributes have revealed much more than a shamanistic paradigm, henceforth also a cosmological one as well, which may point towards a possible cultural origin and therefore demonstrate in a number of ways how the art has significance in relation to this. Through these observations above, it may be said that search for the other perspectives on the history of the Sami have led to a series of questions regarding the cultural context of the rock paintings in Finland in relation to Sami ethnicity, identity, cultural heritage, and continuity of culture, which is what the aims attempt to bring into light below. This is because, as can be argued, as to how what rock art and Nordi drum symbolism do in general is demonstrate what, and the link between these two, demonstrate what Guttorm refers to as the existence of common memory, thus seem reflected through oral traditions with regard to the many parallels found within styles, designs, and landscapes amid both rock art and drum symbolism despite the large time gap. So it is also helpful to take into consideration that in relation to Sami history in Finland, Solbach recalls how in the Middle Ages there are numerous mentions of the Sami living in central and eastern Finland and Karelia, and many place names in this area are derived from the Sami language, recalling the time of Sami settlement. In addition, further data presented below helps bring into focus issues regarding the protection of rock paintings as irreplaceable sources of traditional knowledge and cultural heritage, and in what ways this is under threat because of vandalism and a lack of involvement by Sami scholars. So if we have a look, I want you to make a few more points here about the problem of interpretation of Sami history, because we know they've been an oral culture, so there's not any, they haven't written any records down, but what's been written has been preserved in art. So according to Sami scholar, again, Veli-Pekka Lehtela, Sami ethnicity was made distinct when it came into contact with an agricultural population. According to linguists, this happened in the Bronze Age around the 2nd millennium BC and probably led to the split of the ancestral language into the Finnish and Sami language groups. Another issue is that, as I mentioned, the Sami are a visual culture, and therefore art is one of the main mediums that has been used to portray the relationship with landscapes, animals, water, nature, and spirits. And also there's been no written sources previously because of it being an oral tradition. Early literature about Sami religion and culture was produced by persons outside Sami society. Priests and explorers and missionaries have been mainly responsible for that. Sami worldview is different from Western culture and related to language and natural cycles. There's been also, again, with this ongoing problem, especially up here in the north, there's in all countries, it's not just in Finland, but also in Sweden and Norway. And on the Kola Peninsula, we find that there's extensive institutional racism against Sami ethnicity, denial of the existence of Sami cultural history. And finally, when the European history was written, the history of the Sami people was not included. Quite often it's kind of enmeshed into that of the nation states. So to further elaborate on the issue of this attempt to make a distinction between Finno-Ugric North Eurasian rock art and the art that's been made by the Sami, and why in rock art research that the Sami have lacked representation or even any involvement. As you can see here, I've put a number of titles of scholarly articles that have been published. Anna-Lena Sikala being the first one, where she talks about Finnish rock art, animal ceremonialism and shamanism. And then Milton Nunes, prehistoric rock art and local Finnish prehistoric rock art and local historic traditions. And then Antti Lahelma, communicating with stone persons, anthropomorphism, Sami religion and Finnish rock art. So he makes a clear distinction between the two. He doesn't associate the rock art at all with the Sami, but mentions Sami religion. And then we've got another one by Anna-Lena Sikala, Finnish rock art and rock painting tradition. Antero Kere wrote a title of a chapter, How Rock Art Has Inspired a Return to Finnish Roots. And then again, Milton Nunes, Reflection of Finnish Rock Art and Ethno-Historical Data. And then Eero Autio, Horned Anthropomorphic Figures in Finnish Rock Art, Shamans or Something Else. Now, as you can see, those titles are completely devoid of any, real kind of representation or visibility regarding rock art in Finland. And there's also similar publications also in Sweden and Norway. So it's not just a problem that's encountered here. Okay, so looking at a new research and interpretations regarding the cultural context of the paintings in Finland, this is what I've been working with and developing. The new research, which focuses primarily on cosmology, because as I mentioned, quite the big drive, the big interest in early rock art studies was in shamanism and not in cosmology, and there's a big difference. And so what we find is that there's different layers to this rock art that's in Finland, and this is why it's important to try and figure out what those layers are, so that we can better understand them. And so in the work I've done, the cosmology analyzes a series of figures with horned and triangular headed attributes in the prehistoric rock art in Finland, which bears resemblance to figures representing Sami gods and goddesses, spirits that are portrayed on the heads of Noide shaman drums from Sweden, Finland and Norway. Analysis of the figures links the paintings with Sami culture and cosmology rather than shamanism, thus presenting a wider interpretation and understanding of the art and its cultural context. And although I say that it's linked with cosmology rather than shamanism, there's also clear connections with shamanism, which is, I will present some of the artwork concerning that. And because rock art is layered, there is also a need to bring into focus Sami myths and totemism, which again are really not, they're very under-researched. So there's great potential there for future research into these subject matters in order to further analyse the content of rock art. Little comparison has been done concerning rock art in the former and current Sami settlement areas on the Kola Peninsula, northwest Russia, with the art in the other Nordic countries. And so the dating, give you some insight into the datings of the painting regarding, this is from Antti Lahelma, who's an archaeologist at the University of Helsinki. According to the current understandings, the paintings of the large Sami region date from approximately 5000 to 1500 BC. And similar datings have also been suggested for other areas as well. This locates the paintings mainly within the sub-Neolithic comb-ware cultures, which practiced a hunter-gathering fishing economy. However, the rock painting tradition appears to continue to the early part of the early metal period, about 1900 BC to 300 AD. And then from Ismo Lukkonen, from material from Ismo's website, his last inventory was done in March this year, 2021, that there's 122 rock paintings, paintings with identifiable, where the sites where there's identifiable figures is 103, paintings, sites with no identifiable figures is 19, rock paintings with controversial dating is 12, with identifiable figures 5, no identifiable figures is 7, and paintings that are uncertain are 7. So the total number of sites is around 141. And I've put a link to Ismo's website there. So if anybody wants to have a look at more, further gain more understanding of the work that he's doing, then you can find it there. And then also important to talk about is the mental landscape behind the art. The rock paintings in Finland have been associated in part with the inner landscapes of shamans from prehistory. Spiritual visions in particular are considered to have been recorded on rock and boulder formations depicting groups of phenomena such as animals, boats, geometric shapes and patterns, human and spirit figures, as well as handprints. Nearly all of these groups have been painted close to or above the water level of lakes and waterways, suggesting mythical links within the earth and below the water levels. Rock paintings may also represent one of the ways in which society was socialized and formed around hunting, fishing and trapping practices, which were characterized by spiritual journeys and out-of-body travel. And so from academic research in Finland, we've got various interpretations of the paintings, which are many, but there appears to be 3 common themes, including hunting magic, totemism and shamanism. And also Sikala and Lahelma of these, according to them, of these shamanism is commonly favoured, as I mentioned. And Timo Miettinen, another archaeologist, calls it a canonical interpretation, even though alternative interpretations still persist alongside the shamanic one. And there, in addition, different images and structures are similar to the cosmological landscapes painted on Sami drums from the 17th century. So then let's have a look at what's important, just to have a look at the background to the research that's been undertaken in Finland since the 1970s. I think Vili Loho, who was an archaeologist, is some of the earliest. And what this is translated from Finnish language. It says that the headless pictures of human figures have been painted on Siberian witch drums belonging to these different tribes, where they show people from the other world, the underworld. In other words, people from the invisible world as it has been interpreted. On the East Siberian rock paintings on the Yakutia living area is a horned-headed shaman with a witch drum and a headless human figure that are depicted. On the Lapps witch drums, there are pictures of deer or reindeer, moose, human, also humans holding bows, ships, some curved, some straight, and some with a curved prow, as in the Astavan Salmi rock painting, and so forth. Some of these pictures are stylized as rock paintings. Among them also X-formed humans and pictures of fish and rectangular net pictures. Also, there are headless human figures which resemble arrow-headed spirit beings. And he goes on to say that when one considers that Lapps have worshipped vertical rock walls as satyrs, and that satyrs have usually been located on lake shores, peninsulas and islands, it is justified to ask what connection the rock paintings possibly have had with the Lapps' belief in mythology. It is possible the paintings have been created by the ancient forefathers of the Lapps, or that the beliefs of the Lapps are a reflection of the beliefs of these people, whose particular styles the rock paintings express. And then also from Milton Nunes, who is he's a retired archaeologist who was working at the University of Oulu up here in the north. And he says that in his writings, some authors have noticed the analogies between rock art and representation of figures depicted on Sami shaman drums. In addition to similarities in motifs and style, the drum pictures are always done in red. Furthermore, there are still other features that link Finnish prehistoric paintings with the supernatural beliefs of the historical Sami. The Sade or Satyr were the abodes of the minor deities or local spirits to whom the Sami made votive offerings and even sacrifices. These local spirits could reside in a variety of places. Big stones and peculiar boulders were also used as sacrificial altars. Sacrifices could also be made in grottos or rocky caves on cliffs beneath or on the summit of fells, in fens, beneath waterfalls, in lakes and springs, or at a tree. At least some of these locations correspond with those sites where Finnish rock paintings are usually found. And then some more up-to-date current research from 2012, Antti Lahelma again, and he says that during the 4 decades that have passed since Loho wrote his text, lots of new material has been accumulated. Even if there is a lot of fundamental uncertainty and open questions concerning interpretation, dating, and the language history of the Finnish area, I want to be a little braver than Loho and claim that the iconography of the rock paintings and the rituals that are connected to the painted locations, there is a clear, recognizable Sami element. It does not mean that the paintings would literally have been made by the Sami people, since Sami ethnicity can hardly be extended to the Stone Age. However, it has turned out that at least in the northern parts of Fennoscandia, the rock painting tradition and/or the ritual action that are connected to it has likely been going on only exclusively in the Sami context from the historical time. It is very likely that the creators of the Finnish rock paintings have been in some way genetically related with the Sami people of historical time. The rock art of Sami culture in historical time was clearly fading, and an esoteric tradition which has not left no signs in literature sources. The number of sites is small, and they seem to, by character, to be marginal, but their geographical dispersion is so large that creating the rock pictures must have been a phenomenon organically connected to the Sami culture. From the position of research, its existence is an important observation because it makes a direct historical approach possible within the interpretation of rock paintings. And again, that's another text that was translated from Finnish to English language. So in a little bit of collaboration that I've had with some of the Sami scholars, this was a map sent to me by Antti Aikio, who's a Sami linguist, which shows, according to him, how Sami languages survived in southern Finland until the middle and early modern ages. Many traces of the languages are found in loanwords and place names. Sami language, once spoken in Finland, have left a trace of themselves in Finnish in the form of loanwords and place names. In the same way, unknown languages have left a trace of themselves in Sami. In areas which have Sami place names, there are also rock painting locations. And as you can see there, these are the dates that are on here are roughly when the Sami populated, the Sami people were still in the southern and central areas of the country. So one of the things that's important also to recognise is what do these rock paintings constitute, and what do the practices that portrayed in them, such as shamanism and hunting, animal ceremonialism, what are they? And one of the things that I've focused on quite a bit in the research is that this idea of knowledge systems, and these knowledge systems provide doorways to the past. Here in the north, it is what is commonly referred to as the artwork of North Eurasian hunting cultures. So rock art is important to understand that how rock art is an integral part of the visual heritage related to both cultural and social identity, which is here in the north characterized by religious practices, shamanism, hunting magic, animal ceremonial, and cosmology, which are intimately connected with landscape, animals and water. Through these practices and interactions, identity formulation takes place. Contents of the art is made up from interspecies communication, consisting of human beings, animals and spirits who live within the landscapes, as well as the air, water and below the earth. It is not uncommon within rock art landscapes to find human and anthropomorphic animal forms that are spirits and mythical beings related to culture and ancestors of a particular group or tribe. This brings us back to mythic discourse and systems of communication that have been depicted through art. And so one of the things that I guess people here have been visiting these rock paintings, but one of the things that comes to mind is that when you think about how they were made, and they were made on these vertical rock surfaces, and also in some these shallow caves and grottos, you can see that the ingredients that they used in there was used because not only did it make the paintings weatherproof, but also it made them last. And as we know, there's this layer of silicon also that's to be found on some of these rock surfaces, which have also helped with preservation. And one of the reasons this is a trait that indigenous people all around the world use is that when they create art, especially rock art, they make it so that the future generations can come into contact with it. And this is no less the same with what we find in Finland. So to give you some idea of where the concentration of the rock paintings are in Finland, again, this is another image, another map image from Ismo Lukkinen. We've got here for quite many years, there's been this idea that the rock art is predominantly below the Arctic Circle, because in the Arctic Circle, we've got the Sami, what are currently the Sami homelands today. So as you can see from the map, we've got the majority of the paintings around the Saimaa and Päijänne Lake areas that are here in sort of central and southeastern Finland. And then the northernmost being up here in Julma-Oakli and Varikallio near Suomussalmi. But what's happened is that in the last few years, there's been another rock painting discovered here in Kollari, which is up in Western Lapland, and also an ambiguous, what's currently an ambiguous rock, possibly a rock painting, we don't really know, up here in Enontekiö, somewhere up this area, on a satyr that is by the river, by the lake side. So this is a more recent map, again supplied by Ismo. As you can see, all the red areas that are marked here, and these ones up here in northern Karelia, and then down here in the southern parts of Finland. So it's opened up a new debate of if these were created by the early the early people, early Sami people, why is it there's not an extensive locations of rock paintings up here in the north? It's a good question, but what we know is that the people of the ancestors of the Sami people have dwelled around here. Aimo Keinen referred to them as the Lake Lap culture. And so anyway, so now there's some new questions and new thoughts and ideas about what may be. This is again another picture from Ismo, the painted area where this new rock painting has been discovered in Kurlinkara, in Kollari, which is extensive, as you can see, and covers the boulder formation, and also, of course, it's by the water. There's a river running right by it, and then you can see also that the graffiti is a real big problem. As far as I know, there's no specific images that can be made out in this area, but as you can see, there's quite an extensive covering of this red ochre, which is the main substance that's been used in the rock paintings. And then also, just to say, as I mentioned, the ongoing debate about red markings at the Nakkila Seitakivi in Enontekiö, and there's a link here to Ismo's site where there's information about this research that he did 6 years ago. And then to come a little bit more, open this debate up again about rock carvings. As we know, people say there's no rock carvings in Finland like there is in Sweden and Norway. Why is that? Well, there's a couple of carvings that have been discovered quite close to Rovaniemi. This is one of them here, which is a male phallus that's been engraved onto a stone that, as I understand, was in the middle of the water. It was photographed here in 1936 by Jorma Leppäho, located at the Maraskoski Rapids on the Ounus River near Rovaniemi. And again, the dating of the carving is unknown. And as is how and when it was destroyed, I think they blew it up. They blew the stone up to make the river wider so that the water could increase, which is a terrible shame. But anyway, we've got evidence that there's been a rock carving. And then in this other one, this second image here on the right, a rare carved, what they call anchor stone, used for a boat, which was found at this Arpiskoski in Tapionkyllä, Rovaniemi. They say probably the late 19th, early 20th century. And it's seen here depicted at the Provisional Museum of Lapland. It's in the archives up here. And one of the things that's interesting for me is that the human-like figure is clearly evident. And also it resembles some of the images in the rock paintings in Finland. But again, because of the dating, it's very, very difficult to prove. And then let's say again, I've already mentioned this. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so let's have the mental landscape behind the art. I've already talked about that as well, so getting ahead of myself here. So one of the things that's, I mentioned this connection with shamanism that's really characterized rock art research in Finland. And this painting, which is from the Haukivuori Mantaharju site, is of particular interest because it shows a human figure that is perhaps a shaman traveling upside down to the lower world. In this picture, he has his arms raised. And then another one, which again is quite interesting, is this human figure that is upside down, as if falling close proximity to animals, is captured the rock painting at Verijärvi in Mikkeli. And again, the location of the painting is just above the waterline. And then we go closer to Helsinki, to Jusjärvi. This painting, I think many people are familiar with. The dancing figures all have their arms raised, which is quite interesting because if you look, this guy has his arms raised and this one also has his arms raised. And so does the figure that is symbolically in the water close to the pike, which has its mouth open. And one of the interesting things about this one for me is that it seems that this ceremony, this ritual, is predominantly concerned with water, as well as this one has got animals. It's got animals in it as well. And then also on the Sami drums, just to give you some reflection there, there's a couple of drums here from the Swedish side. If you look here, you can see the noids, two of them flying upside down. This is the mythical Saivo world here, the entrance to it, and then the same here on this drum from Luleå, where you've got the noidi approaching this ladder that goes down into the mythical Saivo world. So again, we've got some parallels here. And then also dancing figure at Heinäveden, rock painting, and then another one in here, and Salmi on the left, Pakanavori, Kovala. And as you can see, sadly, these have been painted over with graffiti. And then we have another one in terms of shamanism is that here too is depicted a human figure with raised arms. And what's also interesting again in these is that both the figures have got their arms raised. So we see that this is some kind of special ritual pose, or so it looks like, which might give us some answers. And then just to come back to this one, there's a large snake or a serpent, which is seen at the Keltavori rock painting. Here you can see, usually snakes they're horizontal, they're traveling along the land, but with this one, it's vertical. So that's quite significant in terms, it could be a spiritual being, it could be like a deity, a supernatural power, or it could be one of the noidis helping spirits. And then other groups of phenomena, this is what I've been looking at in terms of cosmology, is that in my doctoral dissertation, I published some of these pictures, again, from ISMO, whereby these crosses these or X-shaped that have appeared in certain areas. And I put in my doctoral dissertation, there was a picture of crosses at 4 different sites in Finland. And now I believe that's extended to 8, that there's been more, 7 or 8, there's more of these that have been found. And so from the top left, the landscape shows a cross at the Heinäveden Salmi, rock painting at Ristina. The picture in the centre is from Veeto Taipale in Puumala. The cross in the picture in the top right is from Saarakallio site in Louka. The cross in the bottom left is from Kuorivaara, Parikkala. The cross in the picture in the centre at the bottom is from Saarakallio site at Louka. And the cross in the picture at the bottom left shows a cross symbol below Moose at the Silavuri rock painting at Luumäki. And as you can see there, they're very distinctive. And then if we come down again to some other material here, these are more examples of crosses at the rock art sites in Finland. On top, the left are 3 crosses at Saarakallio. From left to right, 3 crosses at Saarakallio in Louka. Thank you. And on the bottom right, bottom left to right, we've got roaming Capia in Lemmy and 2 crosses at Pyhänpää in Kuhmoinen. And again, what's quite interesting about this one is that these are boats. I think there's about 9 of them up 10 meters high up from the bottom of the rock painting. This big cross is kind of in the middle, joining all these boats together. And so that's quite interesting. So one of the things that I did to try and find some comparative material with these concerning Sami history was to have a look into the 17th century illustrations from some of the missionaries. And this one here from Samuel Reen, which is published in the works of Johannes Scheffers in 1673 and 1674, shows wooden anthropomorphic idols, Varamora, on a platform used by the Sami for ritual and sacrifice offerings as depicted by Ring. On the right, there are variants of this early image in early sources, the main one being depicted in Scheffers, which shows a depiction of a wooden idol on an offering platform, which clearly shows a cross over its chest. So you can see there's a cross there, and then you can see on this, the god Thor here, you can see very clearly that there's crosses that are marked on there. And then in terms of in the museum, in the Nordiska Museum collection in Stockholm, we've got a picture of a pinewood sedi from Eilisjoki in Västerbotten. And you can see that, again, it's another association with maybe a dedication ritual, that this is for offerings. And as we see up above here, that these crosses are probably of something to do with dedications and offerings. And then if we come down again to some other material, we find also that there's illustrations of 3 Noidi drums concerning the X symbol representing spirits and sacred places. So as you can see here, instead of them drawing human figures, what they've done, they've just put X marks. And so that when I recognised this on the Sami drums, this really opened up some interesting points, because I could see then that there may be possibility that these are connected with these rock paintings, what we find in these rock paintings that are here in Finland. And the other thing to bear in mind is that these 3 drums, this one also, as you can see, there's buildings on here like Kotas and Lavud, and then you've got a couple of human beings, but then these like the Akka goddesses and the gods of the weather, they're all portrayed as crosses, as are the satyrs. These are what you can see here on this line, probably where the water is. And then in a similar representation here, you've got these Akka goddesses that are represented as crosses. So one of the things that came to mind after studying these drums was that these spirits can be portrayed as cross figures, or they could be portrayed as cross figures with triangular shaped heads, or they can be portrayed as figures with horns, as you can see in this one here. And then also quite interesting regarding the 2 surviving drums from the Finnish Sami side here in what was the old Kemi Lappmark culture, is that in this drum, which is in the Grasse Museum in Leipzig in Germany, right at the top here, there's an offering platform which has an X, which according to Ernst Manke, they seem to think that this was a place where they made offerings to the Northern Lights. And then also, if we look carefully in these three different fields, the upper world here, you've got three like crosses with triangular heads, and then you've got the same here, and then you've got also some here as well. And when I looked at Manke's work, and his interpretation is that these are satyrs, these are sated places, places of worship. And so again, we've got some correspondences. And then also having a look at the mission resources, Nudleem from 1767, there's an illustration. This is the Sami, this rock is called Solfa Kappa. And these here are offered, where animals were offered to Thor and Storjunka. The priest Nudleem had seen this particular offering place by the Porsanger Fjord in Finnmark, Norway. The bow made of tree was called Bassen Morak. It's written something on this bow, and it is marked with three icons. As you can see, three crosses made of sticks. And also this is a documented religious offering place used by the Sami in the early 1700s when Nudleem was a priest in the area of Porsanger in Finnmark. So what you see here are example likely ancient rain crosses, a form of cross that other crosses later developed from, according to this James K. Hewitt. But again, this is an outsider's perspective, so we don't know. And then also it goes on to say that pre-Christian crosses with four triangles that resemble the ancient fire god crosses are also found dated to Iron Age in the Nordic Sami, in the Nordic countries. So a little bit more about the rock paintings in Finland, and these that look to have triangular shaped structures or heads. So an examination of these ones from Holmenniemi in Heinäveden, the Vievenlahti in Naantali, and then Sorunniemi in Pomala. As you can see quite clearly, these are drawn in a very specific way, that they're triangular in their designs. And then if we drop down again to some more pictures, we've got this one at Uittamonsalmi in Mikkeli, where you can see here, there's one figure here with a triangular head, and then another real small one, which is here, that has a triangular head. And here we've got a reindeer quite close by, and this is probably a boat. And then if we go, one of the most famous ones, to the Suomussalmi Hossa Varekallio rock painting, we can see here that we've got these triangular stick figures with triangular shaped heads. And then we have this dancing figure here with these what look like overextended ears or maybe even horns. It's difficult to know. But what's quite interesting about this whole scene is that it looks like they're all dancing, which again can be associated with trance work. And then just to make a few more points, some more horned figures in the rock paintings in Finland. We see this one here, probably holding a reindeer antler or something similar, is the horned figure from Astavansalmi. And then this one here with the triangular shaped head with the horns at Keltavore. And then, of course, this one that I've just mentioned, which is in Suomussalmi. So then doing a little bit more examination, having a look at some of these other drums from Sweden and Norway, we actually find that down here we've got the Akka goddesses at the bottom, and we've got them with they've got horns on their heads. And then also the thunder god Horogalus, who can be seen here in the middle of the drum, holding the hammer, has got a triangular shaped head. And then the same here with, I think it's the Windman. And then if we look at this drum, also from Luleå, this is really quite interesting because the thunder god and all the deities here, even the Sades where they're making offerings, most of them have got triangular shaped heads, again, which is another very interesting way that the artist has chosen to portray these spirits. And then a couple more examples, both from Swedish Sapmi, one from Lycksele and the other from Asile. We've got these celestial gods up here with diamonds. Some have got like triangular and diamond shaped heads, as you can see. And then here we've got the god of the wind here with these shovels. with a triangular shaped. And then also here, we've got a sacred place with these triangular shaped markings. And then down here, we've got the Aka goddesses again, they're wearing horns. And so when I had a look at a little bit closer examination of these figures at Varikali, I could see clearly that there was some correspondence on the Sami drums between Horogalis, the thunder god, and Biogamai, the wind god, on this particular Sami drum. And then also the figure from Ashtavan Salmi again, there's a similar correspondence down here with these Aka goddesses. And then also this one from Pumala, as you can see up here again with the triangular figures. So it was quite interesting, and I wanted to put this one in as a quite interesting. This is a contemporary Sami drum that's been made by Eli-Marit Helander, who lives now up in Inari, and it shows the Sami world, and this is the world of the dead down here. And what we've got these pictures of Sami people and regular people who were passed away, who were all together, but she's portrayed the Sami people with horns on each of their individual heads, as you can see there. So again, we can see how in this way that these horns have been used as identity markers, that they clearly show that this is something that the Sami people have used for purposes of identification. And then also just one other quick a couple more actually about the rock art in Finland, from the Uittamon Salmi rock painting in Mikle. And then we have a 17th century drum here from Norway. You can see how these auras or energy fields around these deities. And then we've got this one here with a red marking. It's difficult to know whether or not this is just a marking or whether or not it actually has some resonance. But what's interesting is that this figure has like a triangular shaped head. And then also quite interesting in Finland, I found this quite fascinating actually, is that serpents they're evident in the rock paintings in Finland. I showed that one earlier. What we've got here is this Vaskivori along the rock wall rising from the lake. You can see that this one has like a triangular shaped head in some ways here, and the shape of its body and then its tail. And what we've got on this Sami drum here from Asali in Sweden is almost something which is quite identical in shape. And then also here from Alta in Norway, Finnmark, we've got this human being on skis next to a moose. And then on the drum, we can see also that there's a man here who's depicted in skis. And so I thought that was quite interesting. And then also another rock carving in northern Norway, which is this kind of horned figure wearing skis, which I thought was, again, quite unusual, but very, very interesting. And then also coming back to Finland, we've got here this Torni from the Torni Swedish area, which, as we know, is in the border area right next to Finland. We've got this character here with the arrow-shaped head on a drum. And then we've got this one here from Pumala, where we've got this figure coming upside down, coming downwards. I showed it earlier, this rock painting here. And if we take a closer look at this one, we can also see that this figure has got an arrow-shaped head in a similar way to what we find on the drum. So again, I mean, these are, they're very few, so it's very difficult to prove that they are actually linked, but it certainly gives us something to give some consideration to. All right, and the other thing I want to say just briefly, I guess I've got about 10 minutes left, something like that. So I wanted to say just briefly that what's important to consider is that in prehistoric times, we wouldn't have had these border areas like we have today, where Norway, Sweden and Finland would have been divided up into different countries. So, the fact that what's a very interesting fact, as I expressed in the doctoral dissertation, was that the majority of parallels that we find amongst the rock paintings in Finland and in Sami culture are on drums that come from the Swedish side. So which is virtually nowadays next door, just over the water, or even, in the case of Tornio, that Tornio area there, and then further into the South Sami areas, we've got these remarkable parallels. So that's a really important point to take into consideration. Okay, so the next part of what what I want to talk about is concerns protection and cultural heritage of the rock paintings in Finland. And I've been working up here with the Sami in different capacities, and also with some of the Finnish scholars, and we've had a couple of projects in 2013 and 2015 about trying to protect sacred sites belonging to the Sami and other indigenous people because of the threats regarding tourism. And one of the big problems that we have, as one of my friends, Patrick Dillon from Wales, talks about, what we've got is that these Sater places, especially up here in the north, but also we know that they're also all around southern Finland as well. But what we've got here in Lapland, because it's very exotic, you know, to live up in Lapland, to visit Lapland if you're a tourist, is that they've kind of assimilated these sacred sites into tourism, and it's causing a real big problem. As you can see here, this is a poster made by a young woman in 2018 at the University of Lapland here in Rovaniemi, depicts how there is a new articulation of showcasing sacred sites as places of special interest for tourists who visit Lapland, and that is used as an attempted effective way to encourage people to visit the area. However, what they don't tell them is that some of these sites have these dangerous indwelling powers that can cause harm and injury. And the Sami keep going on and on and on about this. And it's like nobody's taking any notice. And so this is a real issue. And what's happened is that not only because of tourism, but also because of vandalism, is that we've got these sites now which have been damaged purposefully, whether it's because the rock paintings are associated with what they call paganism, or whether it's just outright destruction. It's difficult to say. But this one, again, some photography work from Ismo, shows this visible damage at Kapasaari in Kouvola, caused by the use of a shotgun. The damage was reported to the police in 1996. You can see here on the left, we've got some red markings. There's even a figure here who might be somebody who's dancing. And then this is afterwards. You can see that this has all been completely erased. This was totally destroyed. I mean, these, you know, as I mentioned, these are 7,000 years old. I think it's a rare, great tragedy, but it's a common problem all around the world, you know. And then a couple of other images here where you can find graffiti. That we've got this Ruosin in Torasalo in Taipalsaari here on the left. Clearly, the white paint has been painted over these images. And then the one I showed earlier, this one here in Pakanavori in Kouvola, clearly shows how. And some of these, you know, the Cultural Heritage Protection Unit at Museo Verasto, they've cleaned some of these places numerous times, and the kids, particularly teenagers, will go there and respray them or repaint over them again. And then a couple of another one site here in Heinäla, in Rautavaara, shows the main area of the painting has been covered in yellow paint. And again, one of the problems that's contributing factors towards this is that, you know, once upon a time, these were really remote areas, but nowadays there's urban areas that have been built quite close by, so they're quite close to where people are living. And then a couple more. We've got Loppensula, Lopponen's Cave in Kouvola here, where you can see graffiti and scratches. This is one I think that Elina Taskinen from the National Museum of Antiquities said had been cleaned like 3 times, and still they've come and put scratches on it. And then another one we have here, Haukavari Mantaharju, where a grill has been built under the paintings. You can see some of the red images here. The paintings I don't think they were recognized when they built the grill, or they maybe didn't know what they were. But you can see here there's clear carbon damage from the fire. And then a couple of other ones. We've got some carbon fire damage at Halsvori and Jyväskylä. And then what looks like shotgun damage here to the information plaque at Saarakallio. near Uvascular. And then a little bit more research up here that I've been doing in the north about protection of sacred sites. We've got here at the Porvenir Sede in Inari, you can see that a fire has been lit up against the Sede and it had cracked a piece of it there. And then also in this Kirkkopata Sede, which is in Muonio, we can see that they've actually collected some rock from the stone and built a fireplace with it virtually underneath the Seta. And again, there's no signs of telling people what these places are, and this is what can happen. Great tragedy. There's some both of these Sedes, there's documented oral narratives that have been collected. With this one, there's stuff from Samali Paulaharju's work from 100 years ago about the Sami and the connection with it. And so also same with this one in a more local, in a more contemporary setting. There's stories about offerings being made to this Sede. And then again, concerning tourism, we've got here Pakasaivo, which is one of the holy lakes in Muonio, which is used as a tourism attraction. What I found in 2019 when I was visiting the site is that this group of Finnish men and French men together had tied some ropes around one of the spruce trees to the base of this spruce tree trunk. And then what they did, they used a drone to fly this rope, wire, for trapeze artist work, so they could walk across the lake and film it. So, I mean, there's a big sign up here that talks about, that this is a holy place, it shouldn't be desecrated, but yet still they chose to ignore it. And so they were reported, and the forest wardens caught them and took their names and kicked them off and made them take this down. And, so these are, as I said, these are ongoing threats, and it's a real problem. We're just actually starting a project now with Indigenous people and about this, trying to raise the awareness about there's this everyman's right in Finland, as we know in the Nordic countries, where people are allowed to go wherever. And this is the kind of the dark side of it, unfortunately, is that people somehow interpret that they can do what they want, and they can damage rock paintings and light fires against them and scratch them off and, bray metal pegs, put metal pegs into them and use them for rock climbing, etc. So it's a real issue concerning this really unique cultural heritage that's here. Then also, just to jump from there back to I wanted to finish this, bring this to a close, to talk a little bit about what scholarly research has determined about the theory of drums that are depicted in the altar rock carvings. I don't know if anybody knows about that, but there are actual pictures of instruments that have been considered to be drums that are from very, very early. And so Nut Helskog, who's now a retired scholar he was working at the University of the Arctic Museum there in Alta in Finnmark, and he was somebody who was instrumental in discovering these rock carvings at the Alta Fjord there in Finnmark. And he says that the earliest indications of the use of drums stems from the rock carvings in Alta. First, there is a figure of a person who was beating a drum while walking behind a group of hunters dated between 4,200 to 3,600 BC. Then there are two more persons holding a circular object, which may be a drum, among 12 dancers on a boat dated to approximately 500 BC. And then outside Finnmark, there's a human figure at Skavberget in Tromsø, holding a circular object while in a movement together with another person. The circular object can be interpreted as a drum. Although the evidence is circumstantial, both rock carvings and rock paintings seem to point towards a long tradition in the use of drums and shamanism. And as I have some pictures here, a couple of these I took myself. This one, as you can see there, this figure's got a circular object with a stick, which looks like a beater. And then these are the dancers on the boat there that have these. There's at least one circular object there and one there. And then there's this one here. This is difficult to know, actually, because there's a moose in close proximity. It's difficult to know whether this is some kind of a bundle of straw or whether or not it actually is a drum. It's, again, quite difficult to prove. But anyway, what's quite fascinating about the material, this link between the rock carvings, this is Norwegian research, is the rock carvings, which you can see here come from the Alta rock art site, which was discovered in the 1970s. And then these images here from the shaman drums from Norway and probably Sweden from the 17th century. It's like, look at these parallels that they've found. I mean, quite remarkable when you think about it. And this is research that's been done by Arvid Sveen, who is a Norwegian photographer. So we see there's 6 examples of these really, really clear parallels. I mean, of course, these animals particularly and the activities that we can see are homogenous to this part of the world. But then we've got these, the probably hunters, and then the skiers, and then also this person who is, this would be an oid from a drum, and this character here that I was just showing from the Alta rock carving in Finnmark. And then another couple of other interesting points in terms of links is that these are 2 rock carvings from the Alta site.
Oh, it's a noun.
What? These images show clear links between, I'll come to the material that we've also found in Finland. We've got these what look like net-like structures here that you can see. And then at the Vitrask rock painting at Kirkkonummi, you can see just faintly here, there's one net structure there, and there's one net structure there. And then here you've got what looks to be a sede or a satyr. It's like a snake kind of figure with an eye, a nose, and then the head neck here is separated. So it might be one theory. I was with Ismo Lukanen here in 2015 when we did some research up here, some photographic work. It might be the case that these nets were put here as a place to offer to this sede, the satyr that's here. Then if you have a look on these drums from Ernst Manker's work, we can see again a number of these nets that seem that are apparent in the Sami context. So anyway, just to bring the presentation to a close, a few concluding remarks. So the research has sought to outline possible links between the art from within the historical culture of the Sami that developed its own form during the post-glacial period and evolved into what is commonly referred to today as the pre-Christian religion. Really, one of the things that I think would be so great would be if there was more joint cooperation between the Finnish scholars and the Sami scholars in terms of this historical culture. And it's, I think even more so in a wider perspective, right across the countries, and also between these elders who have the knowledge in the Sami society about this artwork, and in order to help better identify and understand additional myths and totemic beliefs that might be associated with the rock art in Norway, Sweden, Finland, and the Kola Peninsula in northwest Russia, where the Sami people have settlement or have had settlement earlier. And then again, the correspondences between rock art and drum landscapes and figures are indicative of a shared historical past with respect to identity and symbolic elements of socio-cultural structures and related phenomena and its different manifestations within different time periods. And then from the nets found at the rock carvings at Altaford, rock paintings at Vitrask, Kirkkonummi, and on the 17th century drums, we find that these are in both cases linked with hunting and possibly offerings, which is significant in terms of rituals. And I also want to say that there are also nets at Astavansalmi, Sarkivesi in Haukavori, and on a stone at Nastinristi. And then just to finish, I would say that, as you've seen from the material, better protection is needed rock art sites as well as sacred sites where the Sami people, and also we could say that the early Finnish culture they have this cultural history that's there because of the cutbacks of the government, and in addition to a lot of these rock painting sites being very remote nowadays, it's very, very difficult for for them to be adequately protected. And I think at this time, this ancient, the Antiquities Act is being upgraded, but we don't know what kind of level of protection or, like fines or imprisonment or whatever, whether they'll put any of that in it in terms of trying to use this as a deterrent from stopping people from destroying this absolutely irreplaceable cultural heritage. And I'll leave it there. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Francis. It's very, very interesting. Maybe we could have a few minutes for some questions and comments. Well, I had some things in mind, or actually, I think there would be quite a lot, but well, first of all, it's just it's actually a question about words, or like kind of rhetoric. I just noticed that you used the word shamanism, and I know, for example, Juha Pentikäinen has said that we shouldn't talk about shamanism because it actually is not any ism. It's not like or like what Mika Vanhapia said somewhere, that like being a shaman is a method, that is not a religion itself. But well, so what we have used, like what I have told people that in Finnish it's like shamanius. I don't know if it's shamanhood, or how would it be translated?
Shamanhood, yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's like a. But well, what do you think about it? Is it like it's just a somehow like a common habit to talk about shamanism, or is it?
Yeah, it's a question. I mean, in the Sami context, it's called Nordivuorta, which is the native term in the North Sami language for this practice. And of course, the term shamanhood was developed by Pentikäinen from Siberia. And of course, the Finns being related to that Finno-Ugric language stratum there. And of course, scholars are always trying to develop these terms. But of course, it's a really heavily overloaded term. And as we know, it has its origins somewhere in the Tungus culture in Siberia within the 19th century. Could I say, anthropological sources. So for the Sami, they use it. They use the term today. Shaman can also mean somebody who's a hoo-ha, that somebody who's a bit wants to be something, or who's a bit not altogether. It depends. They have different uses of it. They use it quite open and freely in Norway. They use noid in Sweden, and then in the Finnish context, they would use. I've heard the Sami using both. So it depends on the language. Of course, it's respectful to use the language, but again, when we go back to prehistory, we have absolutely no idea the terms that we used to describe these people that were flying. But we know in the 17th century drums they are referred to as noid and noidi and najdi in the Sami, South Sami language. So it's a variation, but basically it means somebody who is skilled in outer body traveling and that makes journeys to different worlds of existence, which is quite different from many other practices. And I think here in the north, it's quite unique because of the environment in the Arctic and the sort of taiga, boreal forest areas as well. So, but yeah, it's a fair point.
Okay. Okay, Nora has written in the chat. Actually, well, about those carvings, it's an interesting question. Actually, I was going to ask about it, but then you mentioned that it's like that like officially that it's like the official idea is that there are no carvings in Finland, but we even have some in Heinävesi. And I tried to look for the pictures, but well, I'm sharing the link. We have on visitheinävesi.com. I have that article, which I noticed that I've forgotten to update, so that well, in the end there are no pictures. But you know, if you check the link there are some carvings right in the. Oh, there are actually two. I don't know. Somehow I should actually share the. But now I don't know how to share the display by myself actually. Do it. No. Okay. But well,
Do you know the dating of the carvings, Mikko? Have they been dated? Are they prehistory or are they more modern? Do you know?
No, they haven't been like well, the first one there, which like looks like a, I don't know, looks like a bird or something. It could be even that it's like it's totally natural. It could be just that like some melted stone.
Yes.
But then they're in the lower there, like quite close to the end of the article. There is a carving that actually disturbingly looks like the logo of Nike. So it's like a well, that's clearly it has some well, you can see some scratches that it's been clearly really carved. It could be that there's like that it could have been originally some natural form that has been just somehow like made more visible by carving. I know, but Aimo Keijonen said that there are about this, that some types of quartz, quartz loses its becomes like matte from the surface in 1,000 years, and then there are some stones that will it takes about 100 years. So of course that doesn't have real quartz, so it's like really difficult to say from what time these are.
Yeah, so, and he made them also. And I remember, I don't know if she's in the lecture, Helena H. Carhu from down there near Jones, who posted earlier this year on Facebook a image of a rock carving that was there by the water somewhere. It had been documented by a museum some years ago, and that was another unusual one. I haven't been to visit it, but it would be interesting. In some ways, it did look like one of the Aka goddesses from the Sami drums, but again, it's very difficult to know, you know, without having what we need on this research is we need Sami scholars and we need Finnish scholars to work together to try and determine what these are, not so, you know, one can have the power, or it's like, but for the culture overall as a way of sort of preserving the history that's here. But you know, the point I mentioned in my about the not very few was that in a prehistoric context. I don't know of any prehistoric. I know of ones later from the Bronze and Iron Age. Some of these sun wheels. There's one in Turku actually. I know of, and I think there's another in Kimminki that might be a more recent one. And then I think there's one up on the eastern border. These sun wheels, but they're mostly known in southern Sweden. I don't know if there's any in Russia or not, but in the prehistoric, it's strange that in Norway and Sweden you've got this abundance of prehistoric rock carvings, but in Finland there isn't any. And it's like the big question is, well, why is that? You know, and it's I think archaeologists have, Antila Helmer's written about it as well, is quite baffling. The people have been searching every summer trying to find some, you know, have we got any rock carvings in here that we can find out? And maybe there are some that have been discovered more recently. I haven't heard anything, but by comparison to Norway and Sweden, where there's very many of them, here it seems they're painted instead by the water. So it's quite interesting indeed.
Yeah, what I know about those carvings in Vaaraniemi, which the first one in the article, like there are several of them. They were discovered sometime in the 80s, early 80s, I guess already, and they were somehow studied by the regional museum, but then they just ran out of money, so
Yeah.
so they were somehow totally forgotten. They are not in any registers or anything. Like well. I was shown them a couple of years ago, so we have it now. We have them in like our in our lists, but that could also happen. And it's somehow like, I don't know. It seems like as if it's also kind of a, you know, there's a strong belief that they don't exist in Finland, so they are not researched. that's also what happens.
Yeah, without trying to get political, and I'm not getting political at all, but yeah, I'm really glad, Nico, that you mentioned this thing about the money being cut back and no money. You know, Finland gives hundreds of millions of euros to the EU every year, you know, that goes to Europe, goes to the other world, and yet still the cultural heritage and the ancient history here is so underfunded. And it's a really issue that nobody's talking about. You know, it's a real important issue when you take into consideration how much money goes to Brussels. I think it's a great tragedy, you know, but it's a reality. But it's something that nobody's saying, nobody's talking about. It's like, why isn't that money being allocated inside the country? And I'm not just saying that because I'm from, you know, Britain and we're out, we're no longer apart. But it's been these issues were discussed before, this Brexit issue, and there's some real serious questions there that need to be asked about why is it that this massive amounts of money are being going to this EU fund. I mean, of course, a lot of it comes back to Finland, but there's a lot of it that doesn't. And it's yet still this ancient sacred history, 7,000 years old, is so funded and undermanaged because everything has been cut back, everything. And it's like, you know, if we don't know, I'm a historian, if we don't know our history, we don't know who we are, you know, and it's very, and you know, the tourism, as I've shown here, and this vandalism that's happening, destroying these ancient relics, they could be far better. It could be something that's far, it needs to be very, very lifted up and upgraded so that these sites get the recognition and the real protection that they absolutely deserve. They're protected on paper in this Antiquities Act, as I mentioned, but in relation to signs that need to be put up there with, you know, if you go to a rock art site in Australia, you take a photograph without permission, it's an instant $5,000 fine or even imprisonment. Same in the USA, in these other places where they have these very strict laws that you cannot visit these sites, only with a tour guide, under guardianship, you know. And I'm not saying that should be the case here, but it's an example of how prized and how valued that these paintings are, you know. So anyway.
Yeah, it is ancient art anyway. Yeah, well, okay. I think we
well, if I can just add to that,
yeah.
Actually, it is ancient art, and one of the things that makes it unique in terms of the whole Nordic countries, and especially Finland, is that this art is the first written language that is here. It is the very first written language source that has come from after the last ice age, from 10,000 years. That in itself makes it completely unique, you know. And there's so much more work to be done about interpretation and joint work with the Sami scholars and historians from Sweden and Norway and maybe the Kola Peninsula, where this stuff could be really, really thoroughly examined and do this comparative analysis and it be preserved and saved for the culture, for the identity, and for the future generations.
Okay, so Joel Vares has a question. Please ask.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Francis, for the great lecture. I was just wondering that since some of these rock paintings in Finland seem to be rather cryptic, at least what I've seen. So I was just thinking that how confidently can we trace these rock paintings to the Sami culture? At least the picture that you showed us, you made a great case for the paintings that you showed. But I mean, there's kind of many rather cryptic paintings. So I was just wondering that should we see the ancient Finnish cosmologies and beliefs rather pluralistic than clearly separated, since, for example, we are talking about the Sami culture and other Finnish ancient beliefs. So often we're separating those two. So I was just wondering that, should we do that, or should we watch the beliefs more pluralistic or something?
Yeah, thanks, Joel. It's a good question. One of the I should also say something about this. One of the reasons why I've been interested in the Sami aspect in this rock paintings is because they're a minority culture. They're less than 10,000 people, you know, and so in that way, the art is quite unique. And again, what we need is more research, because there's also parallels in those rock paintings that you may find in the Kalevala, as crazy as that sounds, from Väinämöinen's journey into Tornala and this, you know, which is from the 19th century, as we know it's much, much later. But the fact that this landscape here, that the people have shared the landscape, but we do see differences, you know, in the Finnish pre-Christian religion and the Sami pre-Christian religion, obviously. For example, we don't know for sure that the Finns use drums. There's questions. I think it was it Matti Kuusi or somebody in his Karhu mythology about the Finnish pre-Christian religion put forward one idea that and you know, so the difficult with the Finnish pre-Christian religion is we have something that's been preserved. Veikko Antonen, let's say, has written quite extensively about it. But what we've got from the Sami from the 17th century is these drum landscapes, and so that gives us something to work with. But in the Finnish context, it's quite difficult. But it doesn't mean to say that they haven't also those ancient ancestors, like the ancient ancestors of the Sami, have not been involved. You know, they probably have, as I say. But to try and get some look at the Sami context with them being like, we don't know how many Sami people were, or those that developed to become Sami after this split thousands of years ago. We don't know how many there were. But one of the things that we do know is that the way that they expressed their traditions and culture and practices has been through art, you know. So, and this is why I really try to emphasize that more research and more collaboration and more investment is absolutely needed, you know.
Okay, I think we'll somehow try to close this. I think that there would be like things to talk about for a few days easily. Yeah, well, what I wanted to comment like about what is it about Kalevala, of course, like, you know, those like big stories and like big narratives, it seems that they are quite common for like universally, like all around the world. So it's like that. So it must like happen also here, that they are like the origins of those stories. It's like I think no one can really say who originally told them. And what you said about how little we know, or how little Finland uses money for researching the ancient history, I think it's really true, and that's one of the things that like I would say, like my experience, how all this Muinaisseura started and everything. We were 2009 and 2010 especially, we had that Heinäveden Pyhät paikat project with Juha Pentikäinen and Aimo Keijonen and Timo Miettinen. And I remember somewhere actually on one of the ancient graves here, in Bronze Age graves here in Heinävesi, that I just got that insight that what you had been talking about, those telling about the ancient rituals and everything, and all those stories. I realized that I had never heard, they were never talked about at school, for example. But somehow when I heard them, they were like, I somehow felt that I have them in my genes already. But that's it's even absurd how little we know about our own roots. I think it's getting better. But for example, where I was like I was at school in the 80s and 90s, so like that they weren't talked about. but well, we were told very much about mythology of one nation that happens to live in the east bank of Mediterranean. So it's like that. So there's a lot to do there, and that's why we're doing this.
If I could say a few closing words also on that, Mikko. I think the situation in Finland is that the majority of the paintings only started to be discovered in the 1970s, compared to Norway and Sweden. Especially Norway, there was these rock carvings were known in the 17th century, but in the first rock painting that was discovered in Finland was the one at Vitrask that I showed. Apparently, but it was Sibelius who found it in 1911, and it took 7 years for it to be investigated. So it was quite slow. And then from the 1970s, maybe late 60s, 1970s and 80s upwards, then they started finding them. And also Ismo Luukkonen has just documented sites. They've found 2 or 3 new sites again this year. So, and I agree that, and there's questions here at the University of Lapland, the Faculty of Art and Design. They play a part in designing the artistic education in the national curriculum. There's so little about the rock art and the Sami cosmology and the Sami religion. There's like a page and a half of each, something like that. And I think, again, if children get to know about this thing, then they're educated about it. So it gives them a sense of pride, sense of responsibility, and a sense of interest and wanting to find something out. But where it is at the moment, all the other mainstream religions, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Sikhism, all these, they teach them, they give, but yet still with this own prehistory that's here, with this remarkable rock art, heritage. It's like, where is it? It's just not there, basically. I mean, there might be some in these local municipalities where there's some carvings. They might take the children there, which I wrote about, an article published in May this year about using rock art as an education resource, as cultural heritage. I wrote a paper that was published in an e-journal in Iceland. It's quite an extensive publication, and I've brought these issues up. But at the moment, it's like, how is the way to get to the ministers, the Minister of Education here and the other ministers, and get them to look at this and say, come on, it shouldn't be just available in museums or at university level. What about the younger children that would need to know something about this?